القصة هي قصة تأليف السياسيين.
Watching the English newscast on Future Television. I'm Linette Samim, and these are the news trending today. Hezbollah and the Free Patriotic Movement boycott a cabinet session in light of a lack of consensus among rival parties. Garbage pickup resumes in Beirut and Mount Lebanon after Supreme suspended trash collection on account of a two-day employee strike. And Syrian rebels and forces loyal to President Bashar al-Assad agreed to a new ceasefire to halt fighting in Zabadani. Hezbollah and its main Christian ally, the Free Patriotic Movement, have boycotted a cabinet session chaired by Prime Minister Tamam Slam. A source at the Grand Sarai said the FPM's decision comes in light of the lack of consensus in the cabinet, adding that Hezbollah decided to boycott in solidarity. Hezbollah Industry Minister Hussein Hash Hassan confirmed his party's decision in comments to Al-Manar television. Today's cabinet session had crucial items on its agenda, including approving salaries for public sector employees, food supplies for the army, and several other grants. Garbage pickup has resumed in Beirut and Mount Lebanon after Suklin had suspended trash collection on account of a two-day employee strike. Suklin workers, including trash truck drivers, mechanics and inspectors, are pushing to know the fate of their jobs if the state decides to find another company to manage Beirut and Mount Lebanon's waste. The workers are demanding a 36-month severance package and reimbursements for owed medical expenses in case they're sacked. Shortly before garbage collection resumes, the clean truck drivers briefly blocked Beirut's Karantina area near the company's headquarters. Suklin issued a statement earlier this morning to calm the fears of its employees. The strike was held despite the government's decision to scrap the tenders to find new waste management contractors. However, Suklin's contract with the government expired on July 17th. Foreign Affairs Minister Gibran Bassil has become the new head of the Patriotic Movement. The FPM-run news site Tayyar.org said Bassil's list, which included Nicolas Sahnawi and Romel Sabir running as his two deputies, won uncontested after the other list, headed by Ziad Baye, failed to meet the party's bylaws in order to contest the election. Baye's list included France-based FPM member Faris Louis and Eli Malouf as prospective deputies. Two people were killed overnight as militants from the Fatah movement and Islamist group Jund al-Sham exchanged machine gun fire in the Ain al-Halwi refugee camp in the southern city of Sidon. A Palestinian source said a brief clash broke out in the camp's Bustan al-Quds Safsaf area before midnight after suspicious movement was detected by the feuding sides. The fatalities were identified as Radwan Abd al-Rahim, a member of the Joint Palestinian Security Force, and Fadi Khalil, a camp resident. Clashes earlier this week between the Fatah movement and Jund al-Sham were the fiercest to rock Ain al-Halwi in years. A fragile ceasefire was reached on Tuesday, but many fear further clashes. Notorious Salafist Sheikh Ahmed Lasir has admitted to funding a group operated by extremist cleric Sheikh Khalid Hoblos and involvement in armed battles against the Lebanese army. Military investigative judge Riyad Abu Ghaida questioned Asir and issued an arrest warrant against him on charges of funding Hoblos and offering his group necessary logistics and arms support. Sources say Asir confessed to all the charges against him and gave the judge a detailed testimony on his links with Hoblos and the involvement of his supporters in armed clashes against the Lebanese military in the north. A two-day ceasefire between the Syrian army backed by Hezbollah fighters and rebels was holding in Zabadani near the border with Lebanon and in two Shiite villages in the northwestern Syrian province of Idlib. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said the truce, which began at 6 a.m. this morning, will last for 48 hours. It was the second ceasefire in just over 2 weeks. The fighting in Zabadani has been part of an offensive by Hezbollah and the Syrian army to expel militants from the mountainous Syrian border area of Al-Kalamun. Meanwhile, Syrian rebels have also maintained a siege around the Syrian Shiite villages of Kefraya and Foua, the two Idlib villages covered by the ceasefire. The truce aims to allow warring groups to resume talks to end the fighting. 2 senior Iraqi commanders have been killed and 10 others were injured in a suicide car bomb attack north of Ramadi, where fierce fighting with the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant group continues. Separately, 3 people were killed in a suicide car bomb targeting a police checkpoint in the town of Bauja, 15 kilometers northwest of Kirkuk. There was no immediate claim of responsibility for either of the assaults. The military and police, backed by Shia militias, Sunni tribal fighters, and U.S.-led coalition airstrikes, are fighting to retake the city from the ISIL group. But progress has been slow and both sides have been suffering heavy casualties in the fight for Anbar. As still to come in our program, the suspect in the on-air shooting of 2 American journalists reportedly kills himself. More details right now. Welcome back. Up to 50 refugees have been found dead in a truck in Austria as German Chancellor Angela Merkel and Balkan leaders gathered in Vienna to decide on how to tackle together the biggest migration crisis to hit Europe since World War II. The Crow newspaper reported that those on the truck may have suffocated. The vehicle, which contained up to 50 bodies, was found on a parking strip off the highway in Burgenland state. Countries taking part include Macedonia and Serbia, 2 major transit nations for the thousands of migrants and refugees trying to enter the EU by taking the so-called Western Balkans route. The foreign ministers of both countries called for a concerted EU action plan at the start of the summit. Moving on to the U.S., the suspect in the on-air shooting of 2 WDBJ7 TV station employees has died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Authorities say Vester Flanagan died hours after the shooting deaths of former co-workers Alison Parker and Adam Ward during a live broadcast outside a shopping mall in Virginia. Police who'd been looking for him since the shooting spotted him on a Northern Virginia interstate and pursued his car, but he sped away and crashed. Police say they found him suffering from a gunshot wound, but they don't know the motive of the shooting yet. Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton says she feels great heartache after this tragic event and decries gun violence.
I was so just stricken to think that these 2 young people doing the work that you guys do every single day would be murdered on live television. And I will extend my condolences and sympathies to their families and to their co-workers and pray for the woman who, last I checked, was still in critical condition. But I will also reiterate, we have got to do something about gun violence in America. And I will take it on. There are many people who face it and know it, but then turn away because it's hard. It's a very political, difficult issue in America. But I believe we are smart enough, we are compassionate enough to figure out how to balance the legitimate Second Amendment rights with preventive measures and control measures so that whatever motivated this murderer, who eventually took his own life, we will not see more deaths, needless, senseless deaths. So, yes, I feel just great heartache at what happened, and I want to reiterate how important it is we not let yet another terrible instance go by without trying to do something more to prevent this incredible killing that is stalking our country. And we've had so many terrible instances of it in the last 2 years, but it happens every day. Intentional, unintentional, murder, suicide, it happens every day. And there is so much evidence that if guns were not so readily available, if we had universal background checks, if we could just put some time out between the person who's upset because he got fired or the domestic abuse or whatever other motivation may be working on someone who does this, that maybe we could prevent this kind of carnage.
Chris Hurst, Allison Parker's boyfriend and colleague, spoke to reporters outside his TV station's headquarters in Roanoke, Virginia. He talked about their relationship and mentioned that James Madison University in Harrisonburg, Virginia, which Parker attended, was setting up a scholarship fund in her honor.
Out and doing live reports from areas that might be unfamiliar to you in times of day where there aren't many people out there. But no one ever thinks that this would actually occur, and yet it has. And she was in a safe place. I am pleased to say that her university, James Madison University, is already in the process of creating a scholarship for her in the department that she got her degree in. She loved James Madison University, Duke for life. That's where she learned how to do the job and grew to be passionate for journalism. And she just happened to be really, really good on TV. Really, really good, and captured humanity with everybody she spoke. This is something that I have been showing people and am somewhat hesitant to show with the public, but she, I believe, would want our love to be shared because it was a love that was genuine and a love that I hope everybody else gets to experience at least once in their life. As young, foolish couples in love do, we celebrate not anniversaries but month-iversariys. And for our 6-month anniversary, she made me this photo album, which says that all of these pictures are from my phone. And I don't really post on Facebook very much. We were not public on our professional Facebook pages or social media as being in a relationship together. It was something we talked about eventually doing, but we weren't there yet. I don't really post much to Facebook at all. But these are pictures from the first 6 months of our relationship, and she said it was my job to upload photos to Facebook and put pictures in here into this scrapbook for the next 6 months.
The United States says ending the illegal trafficking of natural resources on land and sea will bring jobs and help African nationals build strong and better governance. The U.S., which plans to use trade subsidies as a means to get sub-Saharan states on a more mature trade track, used an AGOA forum in Libreville, Gabon, to work with African nations to establish a major crackdown on the illegal plundering and trafficking of natural resources like wood, wildlife, and fish. U.S. Trade Representative Ambassador Michael Froman said the U.S. was negotiating a trade agreement with 12 governments in the Asia-Pacific region through the Trans-Pacific Partnership, where countries will now have an obligation to try and prevent the trade in illegally obtained wildlife.
In our trade negotiations, like the Trans-Pacific Partnership, we're working to make sure countries are working to combat wildlife trafficking and to make sure that they're interdicting and preventing the trade in illegally harvested wildlife, as well as cutting subsidies or eliminating subsidies for the fishing of overfished stocks. And both are very important to preserving the natural resources of places like Gabon. So here we see the supply side of wildlife trafficking and fisheries management, and in TPP we're working on the demand side, making sure that we're doing everything possible to deal with the bridge between the supply and demand and to prevent illegal wildlife trafficking and illegal fishing.
This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now for a recap of our top stories. Hezbollah and the Free Patriotic Movement boycott a cabinet session in light of a lack of consensus among rival parties. Garbage pickup resumes in Beirut and Mount Lebanon after Suklin suspended trash collection on account of a 2-day employee strike. As Syrian rebels and forces loyal to President Bashar al-Assad agree to a new ceasefire to halt fighting in Zabadani. Those are your top stories for today. I'm Lynette Tamim, and I thank you all for tuning in this afternoon. See you tomorrow.
القصة هي قصة السياسيين.